Voyage.
The number one selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet GreenLight, the debit card and money app for families. With GreenLight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try GreenLight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Spotify.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
The document is titled Deputy Report for Incident 07KO18625. It includes an exhaustive list of everything the police found at the scene of Lynn's murder and Dan's suicide. They found medicines in Dan's name, including oxycodone, OxyContin, baclofen, Celebrex, and Ultram. 5 different medications, all of which are used to treat pain. This tracks, given how many people mentioned to us that Dan had severe back pain. But if Dan was taking multiple of these medications at the same time, that might explain his odd manner prior to the murder-suicide, which was noted by both Damon, the contractor, and his boss, Sean, in their discussions with police. Sean told the police that Dan was, quote, a real nice guy, but Damon's worked on the job, another guy, Jason's worked on the job, and they noticed he's got this twitch in his eyebrow, and it's kind of like he's drugged or on medication. The toxicology results from the medical examiner indicate that Dan had diazepam, which can be used to treat anxiety and or muscle spasms, and can also be used to reduce alcohol withdrawal symptoms, as well as oxycodone in his blood. The medical examiner, Robert Dieters, said Dan died of a single self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Officer Russ Adair said that when he arrived in the bedroom, he found numerous spent casings of .45 caliber and 40 millimeter cartridges on the floor and bullet holes in the ceiling and wall. Dan was holding a pistol in his right hand, and there was another one on the floor next to the bodies. The slide on this other pistol was partially open, as if it had jammed.
I believe what happens is this. She goes upstairs and finds him sitting on the bed with a gun in his hands. And she thinks, because they've somehow argued, and my belief is they had a terrible argument in the last day or two, probably the night before, because, again, she went to the gym that morning and she was like, this is it. We had it. I told him I'm leaving him, kind of a thing. So she finds him sort of by the pillows, I think by the headboard, sitting on the bed with a gun in his hands. And she thinks he's going to kill himself. So she goes up to him saying, what are you doing? But he picks it up and shoots her, I think, in the arm. Something that isn't debilitating, but hurts, He goes to shoot, he shoots twice, hits her in the arm. And then he goes to shoot some more, and the gun jams. So he gets up and he goes to the safe that's across the room in his closet, and there is a struggle at the safe. He's opening the safe. There's blood all over the safe. She's gone with him to fight. At the safe, he pulls out another gun, shoots her more times, this time more aggressively. I don't know whether, I think she's been shot in the face, apparently, because as they go back to the bed somehow, there's brains and bone and teeth across the bedroom floor. And somewhere in one of the reports, I think it said, she obviously fought for her life. So she winds up getting shot, I think a total of 5 times, the abdomen, in the face, in the arm, I think twice around her face somehow. And then she dies.
The romantic tone of Dan's suicide note was echoed in his final pose. As Detective Olson notes in his report, Dan's head was lying on Lynn's lower chest. He repeated Russ's deduction of the other gun being jammed, noting this was later determined to be a double feed of ammunition. Detective Olson also notes an open safe in the closet with several more handguns inside it. There was a tooth on the carpet a few feet from the corner of the bed. A piece of human bone, possibly skull bone, was on the carpet, diagonal from the nightstand. He pointed out 7 shell casings in the room. This corresponded with the initial assessment on the scene of the apparent number of gunshot wounds on Lynn. One to the face next to her nose, one on her upper left arm, an exit wound on her shoulder, another behind her left ear, another exit wound on her lower back, and a final wound below her navel. Detective Olson and Detective Markland described bullets they found, a bullet jacket on the carpet, which had numerous long strands of dark-colored hair embedded in the copper jacket. A mushroom bullet found under Lynn's body had long strands of dark hair embedded in it also. A bullet near the left corner of the bed on the carpet, a bullet that penetrated the sheetrock of the west wall of the bedroom, and more. Police report includes a diagram showing the bodies next to the bed with Dan fallen over onto Lynn, and numerical indicators of the various shell casings and guns found in the room placed at their locations.
Cheryl's opinion, Cheryl shared her opinion with me on what happened, was that Dan caught drift that Lynn was going to leave him, and he didn't want any part of that. And so he figured if he was going to be miserable, she's going to be miserable, and we're just going to end this. And that's why Cheryl had come up with that opinion, saying there's no way that he was going to let Lynn walk out of that house and start a new life without him.
I suppose it was sort of like, if I can't have you, nobody can, or I guess that's what he meant all along by he used to sort of say to her somehow, if you ever try to leave me, I'll do something crazy. I guess I'll do something crazy included her.
Here's what retired homicide detective Danny Smith had to say about that.
If I can't have her, nobody will. And that's a theme that unfortunately is very real. There's men out there that if they're going to lose their woman, they go to drastic measures. They can't stand the thought of her living without him and living happily without him and being with another person.
Retired investigator Mike Marty commented on what likely preceded this crime as well. We know from statements Lynn's friends gave to the police that she was afraid Dan would kill her, even if she kept that quiet from Marilyn.
The victim most likely was told repeatedly, if you leave me, I will kill you. If you leave me, I will find you and I will kill you. Those are very, very common threats. And victims who know that they have a serious friend who's willing to go to them and rescue them, for lack of a better term, are very hesitant in reaching out and telling them those pieces, because they know both truths, right? One is a false truth that this person is going to kill them. That's not a real thing when the victim has an outlet. But they really know that the true part is Marilyn likely would have come and taken her away, but she was afraid that this man was going to kill her. People say a lot of bad things about us and our profession in law enforcement. One thing that we do, in my opinion, very well is we help victims who are in need. In a case like this, if law enforcement could have been notified that there was this domestic violence situation. There are so many fail-safes in place to protect that victim, to get her away from him, to get her very far away and hidden from him. Seen cases where that's failed, but usually it fails because the victim reconnects. When the victim walks all the way away from the abuser and disconnects, it is very rare that the suspect finds them and then continues the behavior. Sadly, in a lot of these cases, they do not. Because that intimidation, that power and control is so strong over the victim, it's very hard to get the victim to testify against the person who's told them repeatedly, "If you leave me, I will kill you."
I asked Mike Marty about Dan's suicide note, which seems to only indicate love for Lynn.
A smarter man than I once said, there are very few letters that separate the word and the act, suicide and homicide. And while a lot of people don't understand truly the suicide piece of somebody taking their own life, likewise in the homicide piece of a domestic violence situation, right? If you love this person so much, why are you killing them? Conversely, if you want this to work, why are you killing yourself? And so I don't think there's a really good answer for that, Dan. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
Danny Smith also had thoughts about the note and how Dan seemingly intentionally staged the bodies when he committed suicide so he would be with Lynn.
It seems like it's certainly addressed to others and not her. And then he's trying to justify, and not justify, but he's trying to explain that, hey, I'm not a bad guy. I always loved her, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, and as far as the lying next to her, who knows? I don't know what could have caused him to do that. If it was some romantic idea, or maybe feeling, his some spiritual, that they would go together and rise to the heavens together. I don't know, but that is kind of a strange deal.
Some neighbors who spoke to the police painted a picture of the couple as peaceful. Karen S. Holmand said she had never heard them argue. Charles and Karen Woodman wrote in their statement that Dan would bring his motorcycle over on Sunday afternoons. And, quote, "To our knowledge, Dan and Lynn were always a happy couple who were enjoying life and living in Utah."
Nobody wants to put their laundry out for everyone to see. And, something as troubling as domestic violence in a relationship is certainly, something that most people would want to conceal from their friends and loved ones. It's shameful. And even though the person might be a 100% absolute victim, they're still going to feel shame about it happening to them. Unfortunately, there's other crimes where, a victim feels shamed, and even though they shouldn't, it's natural. It's part of that world. And, there's rape victims that never want to tell anyone that they've been raped because they're so ashamed of what had happened to them. Yeah, it's kind of a tough deal. I think a lot of victims, they try to take that approach to it, that it's not that bad, or we can work through this. Kind of goes back to the whole, people don't want their marriages or relationships to fail. And the fact that domestic violence had occurred, you mentioned he threw her down some steps, I believe, or that should be the part where someone is able to say, no, that's not the case. I mean, yeah, normally he just gets angry and he's menacing and threatening, but he doesn't do anything very often. Well, very often is relative. I mean, if there's domestic violence, to me, in my opinion, once a man raises a hand to his wife, then you've crossed a threshold that puts everything in a very dangerous territory from then on.
Gradually, Lynn's friends were learning what had happened. The news spread by telephone.
I think it was a Friday. I was teaching. I was a culinary home ec teacher at a high school. I got home early around 3:30 or so in the afternoon. My kid was home. My daughter answered the phone in the kitchen, and Lynn was she was a notoriously terrible driver. She always had accidents. She was always sideswiping something. She was just a terrible, terrible driver. I remember we traveled to Europe once, and when we got home the next day, she said, "How are you? Do you have jet lag?" I said, I don't have it yet. She goes, "I hit a car today." So she was always hitting something. I remember once when we were kids in high school, she had her parents' car, and we would drive by old boyfriends' houses, so she went by some boyfriend's house, and he was coming out of the house with his mother or something. So she ducked down while she was driving, and she sideswiped all the cars along his street. So anyway, she was a terrible driver. I'll just set that up as a preamble. My daughter came to me in the living room, and she grabbed me by the shoulders, and she was only 15, 14. She grabs me by the shoulders. She goes, "Mom, Lynn is dead." So my husband was there, my son was there, my daughter, and so I kind of collapsed to my knees and start crying, and when I'm able to compose myself, he said, "I took a number of the person who called. Some lady called." So I composed myself, I don't know, in an hour or so, enough to try to see what happened. But I assumed she's had a car accident. I assumed, it's now October. Maybe it was icy. The roads are slick. She hit a black patch or something, and she's, I haven't been to Utah, but I'm picturing it to be mountainous, and I'm thinking she slid, driving in a car, and that's why she's dead. As soon as I called the woman who worked for her in the real estate office, it was some woman that she worked with, and the woman said to me, I said, was it a car how did she die? Did she die in a car accident? And the woman said, "No, they found them." And when he said they found them, I said, "He killed her, didn't he?" Somehow, when she said that, they found them. I don't know if she got as far as they found him in the bedrooms or something like that. As soon as I knew that he killed her. I said, "He killed her, didn't he?"
Marilyn called all of us, I think.
Yeah, right. Called all three of us.
And I was in California. They were both.
Was in Michigan.
Yeah.
I do remember exactly what she said. Marilyn called me and she said, "Nancy, Lynn, Rick, or what is his name? Dan shot Lynn." And I said, "Is she dead?" Because shot did not mean she was dead yet. And she said, "Oh yeah, she's dead." And
so then she called me and said, Lynn was killed. Lynn was shot. And I said, same thing. I said, "Is she?" She said, "No, she's dead." And
did you?
And then I said, "Lynn who?"
Oh,
because I couldn't even. We had other friends named Lynn. I'm like, "Lynn who?" It just didn't even compute. And I started screaming, crying. And my son was 7 at the time, and he said, "Mama, that was the first time I ever had seen you cry." And it was just so unbelievable that you just couldn't even fathom that could be true.
Yeah, it was beyond. And then Kathy called me. And Marilyn had called me several times, and I was having lunch with our older sister. And I thought, "Oh, Brenda will go crazy if I answer this. I'll just let it go to, the basement." And then she called a couple times. And then Kathy called, and I said, "I better take this because something is not right." And Kathy was just hysterical, saying, "Lynn has been murdered and Dan committed suicide."
I said, what do you mean? And she said, "Go look it up. Salt Lake City, Lynn, Dan, look it up. It's all there." And so she we talked on the phone, and then she got in touch with one of her other very dear friends, Teresa. And Teresa said, I'm coming over. And Cheryl said, no, let's just meet somewhere for lunch. And they ended up going to Houston's in Santa Monica, because Teresa didn't want Cheryl to be alone. So Teresa drove over and they had lunch over in Santa Monica. But Cheryl was absolutely hysterical. And I don't believe she heard it until a couple days afterward. It wasn't like, I'm sure that, Lynn and Cheryl were very close, and Cheryl and Marilyn were close, but not as close as Marilyn and Lynn were. And for some reason, I don't know how Cheryl found out, but I believe she found out through someone that was not in that circle of friends close to Lynn, and she's absolutely distraught. It's disbelief. I mean, we just couldn't believe it. And then when we started reading and hearing about this story, and, I understand there were workers in the house at that point. I mean, it was just, oh my God, what a chaos of events that happened that day. It was just disbelief. I mean, that something like that could happen. If Dan wasn't happy, I mean, I'm of the opinion, well, Dan, take care of yourself. But why would you take on somebody like Lynn? I mean, if you're not happy.
Like I said, Lynn was a warm-hearted, kind, caring, compassionate, person that I really didn't have an enemy in the world. Just a beautiful person, a beautiful soul. And it was sad that she was taken so early. I mean, I didn't work for 2 years after that woman was murdered. I just, I fell to pieces. Well, she was 20 years plus of relationship, and she was family to me. She was here for my son's birth. She was in the delivery room with me, holding my hand. I mean, she was the best person. She really was. She was my everything. Her death was horrifying. And it still, all these years later, still affects me. She was an angel on earth, and to think that someone murdered her is just horrifying. You just can't, wrap your head around it. And, we have pictures of her in our home. She would, every year with my son's school, they would do pictures, and I would have Lynn go, we have to have pictures with you and my son as well. And, those were the pictures on her dad's refrigerator. And, everybody loved Lynn. Everybody loved her.
So there's shock and disbelief across the board with her friends, her coworkers. Out of Utah, out of her community, I guess his obituary kind of shows up in the paper soon after, praising him for being a wonderful dad and husband, and says that she is Lynn predeceased him. Doesn't make any mention about him murdering her, or it's a murder-suicide. It's all sort of implied that an accidental death. I think they're trying to say, oh, this is an accident. This gun, he must have been cleaning his gun or doing something with his gun because he was a gun collector, and this was all accidental death kind of a thing. Meanwhile, he scrambles to get another gun to be sure he can kill her, kind of, it was ridiculous. So very insulting, and made a lot of us quite angry.
Things would get even stranger as the funeral services commenced. On the next episode, we'll hear again from Jackie Bell, who attended Dan's funeral. We'll hear from Lynn's friends, who attended funerals for her on both coasts. And Marilyn's life undergoes a seismic change as a direct result of her friend's death. That's next time. My Best Friend's Killer is a production of Voyage Media. The series is produced by Nat Mundell, Robert Midas, and Dan Benamor. Reported, written, and lead produced by Dan Benamor. Edited, sound designed, and mixed by Nick Misiti. Original music by Derlis Gonzalez. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you're listening, and subscribe now for future episodes.